If only the traffic always flowed as freely as it did this afternoon. At its busiest, 98,000 vehicles use this stretch of the A14 every day. The plan was to upgrade 22 miles between Cambridge and Ellington by widening this stretch and then bypassing Huntingdon with a new dual carriageway. But the project would have cost £1.1 billion. Why today it and 11 other schemes nationally were shelved.
I can announce that there are a further 12 projects with a total value of £8.5 billion approved since the 1st of January, which we will suspend or refer for consideration to the spending review process over the coming weeks and months.
The reaction from drivers we spoke to, predictable.
The amount of accidents we have on the A14 every day is atrocious, so something needs to be done about it.
Especially being an ex-trucker, you know, it's very important that we can be able to get A to B.
But I've been looking forward to having the road widened for some time now, so it's a great shame.
The east of England's busiest road is little loved by those caught in its endless tailbacks. Businesses say the delays cost them millions and that today's news will cost the local economy even more. But environmentalists and many who live locally are delighted.
For several years I felt that this was not good value for money. It was an outdated approach, and I think that this is a very good opportunity to stand back and look at it afresh.
The government will take a fresh look at the A14 scheme in the autumn, but this will be a site we may have to get used to for some time to come. Alex Dunlop, BBC Look East.
Today's news comes 16 years after the old A45 was rebranded as the A14, redesigned to create a fast track from the port of Felixstowe through to the Midlands. Our business correspondent Richard Bond looks at the impact the road has on the region's economy.
When the Orwell Bridge was built, the A14 was called the A45, a road which crawled east to west through town centre after town centre. When the bridge opened in 1982, they were making ambitious traffic predictions.
So traffic figures in about 1985 for the Southend bypass will be about 27,000 vehicles a day.
Within 20 years, twice that number of vehicles were crossing the Orwell, thanks to the growth of Felixstowe. The A45 became the A14 in 1994. New signs and a bold new era.
It's an extremely important strategic road from the economy's point of view. It completes the major new dual carriageway between the West Midlands and the East Coast ports.
There was plenty of spare capacity then, but a rising population and growing commercial traffic soon put the road under strain. Today, the A14 really has two different functions. On the one hand, it's the UK's main trans-European network, connecting East Coast ports to the Midlands and North. On the other, it carries local traffic, people going to work, companies making deliveries. And it's between Huntingdon and Cambridge that congestion is at its greatest. Widening the road to 6 lanes would have brought huge economic benefits. The scheme's suspension saves money for the government, but will cost business millions. Richard Bond, BBC Look East.
Well, let's talk now to John Bridge from the Cambridgeshire Chamber of Commerce. Presumably, you're very disappointed.
We are, and I think all businesses will be totally dismayed at the news today that yet again we're going to have another problem with not upgrading the A14, which everybody that I know, the majority of people feel is so desperately needed and cannot be shelved at this time.
But you're a businessman, you will know that you can't spend money that you haven't got.
No, indeed, and I think everybody understands that we have to cut expenditure and we have to deal with the situation that we currently have economically. But what we have to be very careful that we don't do is cut investment which will have economic benefit and ensure that we can recover from our current economic crisis more quickly than we otherwise could. And we believe that actually the money for the A14 is an investment which will bring wide economic benefits.
All right,
we have to understand that there will be...
Sorry, yeah, if we assume that the government haven't got the money to spend, would business be prepared to build the road themselves?
I think that we have to look at two things. One, we need it, but we have to look at new and different and innovative ways of finding the funding for it. And there are different schemes that we can find. What we can't do is scrap the road completely, and we would have wanted them to carry on with the public inquiry to get the road process complete from the bureaucratic point of view. but what we do need is to look at how we can fund it. But there will be knock-on effects. If we look at the Northstowe development near Bar Hill, that will be now very much at risk because it is dependent on the road being built. Because what we can't do is continue with the growth in the Cambridge area without adequate road infrastructure, because it just will not be allowed to happen.
So is traffic going to grind to a halt on that part of the A14, do you think?
Well, thousands of people every day get stuck in the traffic on it. Anybody that travels along it has a great difficulty, and it is really a blight on everybody's lives that use it on a daily basis. Not only that, but we have lots of accidents with people injured and people getting killed, and it's not really acceptable that we don't find a practical solution to be able to deal with the road and actually get it fit for purpose. The volumes of traffic on it are far in excess for which it was designed, and we are getting problems that occur all the time. Businesses will not want to relate and be a part of the road and relocate to areas within it, and we will find that people also won't want to actually have jobs and have to travel along it every day because they don't want that kind of quality of life.
We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much for being with us this evening.
Look East has learnt that our armed forces have seen a rise in recruitment despite the casualties in Afghanistan. They're at almost full strength, up more than 2% on last year. The Royal Anglians were greeted by record crowds as they held a parade in Southend today. It's part of a week of events to mark the end of the Vikings' recent tour of duty. Our chief reporter Kim Riley was there.
In the words of the Mayor, this was a truly great day. This a town honoured and proud of its association with the County Infantry Battalion. Since being granted the freedom of the borough more than 40 years ago, it's only the third time the regiment has exercised its right to march through town with colours flying, drums beating and bayonets fixed. And the Vikings knew they were amongst friends. For local boy Corporal Ben Lake, this was his second tour of Afghanistan. His family turning out in force, bursting with pride.
Very, very special. Special to us and to his wife and his little girl. Yes, he's brilliant. Brilliant young man. We're very proud of him.
Because I don't normally get enough recognition. Fantastic turnout for people. Absolutely brilliant. Makes me feel very, very proud.
Are you going to have a lump in your throat?
Yes, got my tissues ready. Yeah, no, I'm very proud.
Oh, it's just brilliant. Just makes you feel really good inside, you know. Obviously, they've all missed us, we've missed them, and it's just good that they're showing their support.
Captain Simon Broomfield from Hertfordshire was seriously injured when an IED roadside bomb exploded. It was a blast in which 2 fellow Vikings died.
What does it mean when so many thousand people turn out and cheer you on?
It's absolutely immense. It's quite humbling, really. You know, you have quite a lot. You know, there are some dark times out there, and when you see the support and you realise that the population in the country does support us and is thinking about us, and shows their appreciation when they can, it's really great, and it's good for the soldiers to see that and understand it. It really helps.
Tributes were paid to the 5 young soldiers who didn't return from this latest tour. The crowds were told when serving overseas, support from home was crucial. Here today, that support, rock solid. Kim Riley, BBC Look East, Southend.
Well, earlier I spoke to the Vikings commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel James Woodham. He told me that his soldiers were on top of the world after the reception they received in Southend. And he stressed how important these parades were for morale.
I think these parades provide the opportunity for us to connect with the communities from which we come from. So I think they're absolutely fundamental to that relationship between the military and the public. And they provide an opportunity for us to say thank you to the communities that support us, and also provide an opportunity for the public to get behind what is their county regiment.
But of course not everyone agrees with our troops being in Afghanistan, and you saw that in Barking this week when you paraded there, where there is some dissent. How does that make you feel, and how do your soldiers cope with that?
There was a small demonstration, but we live in in a democracy, and freedom of speech is a fundamental part of that democracy. And much of what we do in Afghanistan is sort of, assisting the Afghans in achieving something similar. So, for me, the overwhelming message which I took away from Barking was the thousands and thousands that line the streets welcoming us home.
Obviously, we get bad news from Afghanistan on a regular basis, but your recruitment remains very high. Why do you think that is?